This is Youth Work, a podcast about youth workers delving into their journey of how they got into youth work.
Happy Youth Work Week, everybody, and welcome to This is Youth Work, our podcast delving into the lives of youth workers across Wales, learning about their journey and how they got into youth work and their motivations behind why they chose youth work as a career. And I'm really happy to be joined today with Gavin Gibbs from Torfaen Youth Service. Gavin, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, as you just said, thank you, Darryl. I'm Gavin Gibbs, Senior Youth Lead here at Torfaen Youth Service, and for the last 3 years I've been an associate with the National Academy for Educational Leadership.
What we'll try and do is to rewind time a little bit, if you can, in terms of your motivations for going into youth work. You know, did you fall into youth work, or is this something that you always wanted to do? How did it all start?
Well, if I can remember that far back, 23 years now, just over 23 years ago, and I literally did just fall into it. I was actually studying biomedical science to become a scientist.
Really?
Quite fancy marine biology and medical science and things like that. And I think it was my girlfriend at the time, or a friend I knew.
Yeah.
I'd just done the youth work level 1 because they were opening up a new youth club in the area, and they needed an extra pair of hands at the Friday disco.
Really?
So I literally just rocked up as a volunteer, and this was pre-DBS days as well. It was...
you could have literally just walked in and helped.
Literally did walk in and help, so you probably couldn't get away with that sort of thing these days.
No.
But I found really quickly, after I went back and volunteered a couple of extra sessions, I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah.
You know, I can relate to the young people. I mean, I was only 19 myself at the time, so you know, it was easy to relate to the youngsters. And I noticed that the youth workers were getting paid. They were getting paid to play sports and have fun, and it's just like...
Did you not even think that was a thing?
I didn't even know youth... Well, I knew that they were youth workers, but I'd only ever gone to a youth club myself, maybe once or twice. But the clientele weren't particularly great at the youth club. I was picked on quite a lot as a kid, so it wasn't the best scene for me. So I didn't even know it was even a career option at that point.
Yeah.
But within a couple of weeks, I'd obviously been noticed by one of the managers, and within 3 or 4 weeks, I think I was in 4 youth clubs paid.
Really?
And before the end of that first year, I was doing 7 days a week in youth clubs.
So that is literally by mistake, isn't it?
It was by mistake,
Yeah.
and I was like, I can't believe I'm making money from this.
Yeah.
Sadly, my biomedical science degree didn't quite work out.
I wonder what mashup that would have been for youth work and biomedical science.
Yeah.
That would have been incredible.
Well, I could have had a Breaking Bad situation.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah.
No.
That'd have been crazy.
Yeah, so what I found, the degree wasn't working out for me. I found I was skipping lectures towards the end of the day so I could race back from Cardiff to Cwmbran to get into youth clubs and things. And sadly I failed my second year of my degree. And for me, it was the first time I'd really tasted failure.
Yeah.
So went into a bit of a dark place personally, quite almost a period of depression and stuff. The only thing that kept me going was my youth work. It just kept me on an even keel. It was the only thing that sort of put a smile on my face. So I had a year away from studying, quickly picked up my level 2 and 3 in youth work, but obviously I think it was called the foundation to youth work then. It wasn't the sort of diploma or the...
So this would have been before 2010 then, would it?
Oh, this was 2001.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a while back. And then 12 months away from uni, I was straight back in uni to start my youth work degree.
What was the differences between the biomedical science and the youth work degree? Because obviously you're successful in getting it. What's the differences?
Well, I tell you, I have got myself into a bit of trouble early in my career because my biomedical science degree, there was like 10 modules on the go at any one time. It was a full-time course. It was sometimes 8 or 9 hours a day, maybe 3 or 4 hours in a lab, working with all sorts of bacteria.
Oh, wow.
And I went from that to kind of a more vocational degree. So when I was telling everyone I was doing the degree with, this is really easy, I had a bit of stick for it because, you know, degrees they're a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But I went from having to do a silly amount of work
Yeah.
to something that was a lot more manageable, because it was a part-time degree that I followed. It's not to say I didn't ace it at all. I probably did enough just to get through, if you know what I mean. But
so the pace was different. And
pace was much different. You know, there was no exams. You know, it was all sort of coursework based.
Yeah.
And, so it was a lot less pressure. So I think I preferred to study that.
What about like the delivery? Because when I think of biomedical science, I imagine massive lecture theatres and you know Bunsen burners and proper you know like your lectures in big long white lab coats and all.
There was some shared lectures with the sports science crowd, but a lot of it was maybe sort of classroom size.
Really?
Yeah, and then like I say, quite a lot of lab work. So we'd have these huge labs with the Bunsen burners. You know, but dealing with like MRSA and E. coli and tuberculosis and I don't
stuff
think
that would cook if it got out would be pretty bad.
Well,
it would be fairly bad.
I'm sure it was well contained, but it's certainly a lot different to dealing with fecal matter in a petri dish in the afternoon, and then going back to Cymran and playing football and sports with young people. So it was a bit of a contrast.
Do you think if you didn't have that sort of hook, so that Friday night, what do you think might have happened? Have you ever thought of the way if you didn't go on Friday night? Where do you think?
I genuinely. Do you know? It's a really good question. I've never even thought about what my path might have taken me, because I was struggling with that degree at the time anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So. I don't know.
Was this more like a welcome escape? So you see the Friday nights, you see, do you know, yes, this looks good.
Yeah.
You know, this can take me away from such a stressful studies and.
It was, and that's it. Like I say, in terms of well-being, literally running around every night for like 2 or 3 hours is better than a gym membership when you're getting paid to do it as well. But you know, I had quite a tough time in secondary school, bullied and all sorts of issues. So being able to help young people, I suppose it was my way of kind of dealing with trauma I didn't realise I had from being bullied in school. So it was it seemed natural. It seemed like a natural progression across. I think I've always been interested in the sciences, but it's something didn't quite fit. Yeah. So I know people sometimes say things happen for a reason, but I don't even know where my life would have taken me had I not bumped into that, you know, that, well, I suppose it was the girlfriend at the time that was involved with it. I don't know where I'd be now.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
That one opportunity potentially has changed the course of your life.
I know. And I think I've lied to myself a few times through the years as well, because even sort of now I'm like, still don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Really?
Because it still doesn't, sometimes it doesn't feel like a job.
It doesn't, yeah. Even how you can get quite fairly senior and feel the same.
And don't get me wrong, it you know, all those fun elements with playing the sports or trips and activities, residentials and things like that, it can be hard work, you know.
Yeah.
Working with a lot of complex, challenging young people, you know, it can be burdensome sometimes, you know, in terms of what you take on in that baggage, but it just doesn't feel like work some days.
So going through the years now, so you've done your degree, and I guess you've done your placement here in Torfaen Youth Service, or
somewhere different every year. So
really,
yeah. So first year was with Torfaen. Second year then it was a mix of Torfaen, and I was actually working in a private children's home in Bristol.
Oh wow!
So that was quite interesting, doing kind of residential work, travelling back and forth for uni, and still getting some youth club sessions.
Yeah.
And then my final year, I was with Blaenau Gwent.
Really?
Blaenau Youth Service, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
which is not too far away from Torfaen, really, is it?
No. The big problem I had in my first 2 years of my degree was I didn't drive, so I was late driving.
Yeah.
Because Torfaen kind of pulled together enough hours to formulate a full-time contract.
Yeah.
They couldn't offer it me without my driver's license. I needed to get
geographically around. In Torfaen, it's smaller.
It is
even
small,
though your population's pretty big.
Yeah, we're only about 20 miles from north to south, but because it was a sort of hours pulled from lots of different pots at the time, it was a case that I had to have a driver's license. So yeah, managed to get my driver's license when I was commuting back and forth to Bristol on the train, which opened the doors to Blaenau Gwent.
Yeah.
So I finished my degree with Blaenau Gwent.
And then at what stage then did you come back here? Because you spent majority of your career.
Yeah,
When I say here, I mean Torfaen Youth Service.
I'm like a yo-yo with Torfaen Youth Service. I seem to, every time I go, I spring back.
Yeah.
I think it was about a year with Blaen y Gwent, because it was quite intense. It was my first proper full-time youth work job. I was always working sort of more than full-time hours, but it was usually from different pots and bits and pieces. Did a stint as a one-to-one LSA.
Yeah.
So sessional work with social services, and so being full-time in schools youth worker in Blaen y Gwent was quite intense. So the first year I literally just focused on that.
Yeah.
But within a year I was missing the evening work.
Yeah.
So it was only about a 12-month, and I was knocking on Torfaen's door again for
Really?
additional. So I was doing both. I was doing the full-time and the
You're missing
part-time.
like the sort of open access elements of
Yeah.
youth work a little bit.
Yeah. That for me, that's the kind of pure youth work, and young people enjoying themselves and being relaxed. That psychologically safe space that we create for them.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Some would say that the open access youth work is like the bread and butter to youth work. Would you agree? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been here long enough now to see, I suppose, to see that cycle where back in 2001 it seemed like everything was open access, and then obviously as more accountability started to come in, that kind of neoliberal discourse, things started to get a lot more targeted.
Yeah.
Then obviously we hit sort of austerity and lots of cuts in the area. So it was almost like open access not disappeared, but it certainly hibernated for quite a while, and it does feel like we're coming out the other side now, and youth services are starting to refocus on open access.
It's interesting you saying that, because the first podcast we had with Carly, she said about like a resurgence of youth work. It almost seems a lot like rumblings under the ground. It feels like something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Are you feeling the same? Do you think?
Yeah, I think what's quite exciting. I think since the youth support grant sort of came in, and that kind of work with the interim youth work board and now the implementation board.
Yeah.
It feels like we're getting more notice as a profession across Wales. I still think we've got a long way to go. But COVID was a horrific time, but for the youth work sector, it really highlighted how flexible we are to the needs of young people in the communities.
And how needed we are, I think.
And how needed we are.
Absolutely.
As an essential service almost to young people. And
well, it was classed as an essential service in Wales at one stage,
So for me, it looks like there's this really good momentum. It's still very much trickling down the mountain. We're not kind of seeing boulders flying down the mountain, but to add to that, I'm very fortunate with the role as an associate with the Leadership Academy. For them to open the doors to youth workers has been phenomenal. And again, we're only 3 4 years into that stage. So I'm hoping that'll continue to grow. And it does feel things are going well. Yeah. Obviously, the financial scene is still very unsteady at the moment, but if we can ride this wave, then who knows what we could see in the near future. Yeah.
Just reverse back the youth support grant, for those who don't know, it's a pot of money given to local authorities only at the moment, isn't it? It's got two sort of target areas, isn't it? It's youth homelessness, mental health.
There's also the Welsh language.
Sorry, so 3 areas.
There are parts to the grant for youth, local authority youth services that are also sort of partitioned off third sector parties, youth work organisations as well.
Yeah.
So, but that's how I ended up back in Torfaen. I talk about yo-yoing back and forward. I think I've been back 2 or 3 times. So this current stint has been about 5 years, and it's because of the uplift in the youth support grant that opportunity came in.
Massively welcome that was, so you yo-yo back and forth. Is that to sort of gain experience, or is there something you've seen roles elsewhere and you thought, do you know what, that looks really appealing to me, I'm going to go there? Have you gone far away? Where?
Essentially, the reason why I suppose I moved around a lot, the primary factor for that was to secure full-time work. Torfaen Youth Service was a pretty much part-time service up until 2011 when they restructured. So the opportunities to have a stable full-time job at Torfaen just wasn't there. So that's kind of why I ended up in Blaen y Gwent. spent 5 years with them, and an opportunity came up in Monmouthshire. So I went to Monmouthshire, sadly only for a year, because I absolutely loved that job in Chepstow. And then I came back to Torfaen in 2011 when they restructured as a senior youth worker then.
Yeah, full disclosure, me and Gavin have previously worked together in Monmouthshire.
Yeah.
But what do you like about Monmouthshire that you say is one of your favourites? What?
We were just talking about open access. I think I just had full autonomy to run youth work provision in a town with a huge youth centre, and it was just phenomenal. We could literally be as flexible as we possibly could with the young people, to the point where sometimes we'd even wait till they come in through the doors to see what they wanted to do, because they just had this incredible freedom to do whatever we wanted. And I think it's the first time I've had that full autonomy in a job.
Is that important to you, do you think, autonomy and flexibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can't stand having someone looking over my shoulder, all the time. If I'm doing something wrong, I'm more than happy to be pulled up on it. But to have that trust, to be able to just,
Was that a culture thing, do you think? And or do you think it was just you were trusted?
Yeah, in Blind and Gwent, I have some really fond memories of Blind and Gwent. The difference there is because I was full-time in a school, it was almost being managed by two different people. So my direct line manager was with Blind and Gwent Youth Service, but I had to abide by the head's rules. Quite a tough head at the time. Lots of the staff didn't, the teaching staff didn't appreciate what youth work was or what was about. So it was sometimes quite a tough place to be in. So as much as I still had my own classroom and kind of freedom to kind of build that work program with the young people, it still felt restricted and almost dictated to in terms of what I could and couldn't do. So going to Monmouthshire and having that kind of freedom was like a weight lifted, and they were again, like Blind and Gwent Youth Service, the Monmouthshire team were incredible, and like I said, really fond memories of my time in Monmouthshire Youth Service.
So when you came back to Torfaen, was it vastly different to the first time you left, or what was the culture like? So I was already working continuously part-time with Torfaen anyway. So you always had your foot in. So my foot was already in the door, but when we restructured, it was almost like starting a culture from the beginning. Really? Because there was a lot of staff that were taken on at that period that only ever done part-time youth work. And they phenomenal. Some of them still with the team now after 12, 13 years. Wow. So because we were all starting this journey together, it was this real nice sort of togetherness, and we kind of grew things together, which was really, really lovely. It's interesting with culture, because some people would argue it starts from the top, but it sounds as if it was sort of started with everyone sort of collaborating and
it was
moulding together.
Because we had, usually when you have inductions for staff, it's like a new person starts, you do an induction with them. This was an entire team having an induction for a whole week together.
You've mentioned a few times about austerity, and I wonder if you think politics has an impact on youth work, because obviously that decision was made after the 2010 general elections. That's when the Conservative Party would have won. They introduced austerity measures, which is very tough for the sector. But do you think politics and youth work have a link together?
Politics has a massive link to youth work. I remember, so I was in Blind and Gwent till 2010. So when that recession hit in 2008,
wasn't it?
2007, 2008. It was at the time as well. It was still come off funding before it went across to Families First funding. And at one point, I was on 6 monthly contracts with Blind and Gwent, with a brand new baby, a brand new mortgage. So it was quite a scary time. And I think that's why I was doing the additional hours as much. I wanted to do the additional hours because I loved the open access evening stuff, but it was also to be able to keep food on the table. And it's crazy because when I first started in 2001, even as a part-time member of staff in Torfaen, there was so much money for things like training that as a part-timer I was offered a fully funded first-year placement and second-year placement at university. but fast forward now, and we can't offer that to our full-time staff because there isn't that money there for training. UK-wide, youth work is sometimes seen as a sticking plaster to antisocial behaviour. Quite often when knife crime rises, all of a sudden then you get politicians saying, "Oh, what we need is more youth work."
Yeah.
Whereas reality, if it was fully funded and invested in properly throughout, those preventative measures would be, I'd like to think, would be in place.
And it's sometimes picked up and dropped, isn't it, when it's the flavour of the week. 'Cause I remember the London riots is when there was a bit of an uplift UK-wide in youth work, and for those who are listening, youth work is a devolved service, isn't it? So it sits within education in the Welsh Government portfolios. Yeah. But it does have an impact, doesn't it?
It does, and it's difficult for politicians as well, because when cuts have to be made, they have to protect statutory services first, and unfortunately we haven't got that kind of protected.
No.
We're not as protected as that. Politicians run on 4 or 5 year terms, so quite often initiatives tend to happen within a term because they want to see results, whereas youth work is a relational occupation, and sometimes it might be an investment in a young person for 5, 10, even 15 years. We've got some young people that started with us at like 11 and still coming around to us at 20, 25 to really see those benefits. It's got to be continuous. If you want that kind of those preventative early intervention methods, which I think youth work is, it's got to be invested in properly.
And I suppose it goes hand in hand with fully immersing yourself in the community as well. If you're well funded and anchored down in your community, people can expect a level of service from you. They know who you are and they know what you do, your value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was, if they were to wipe out youth work tomorrow because of major funding cuts, for example, I think it's only then that you'd see the impact.
You'd come back with a different name.
Probably.
Yeah. So fast forward now, what's your sort of job title now? What do you have to do? What's your level of responsibility here?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Job titles is a bit of a funny thing in youth work because my current title is senior youth lead or senior youth leader. In other authorities, that might be seen as we're almost at kind of deputy level to Dave here. So the 3 senior youth leads in Torfaen Youth Service have all got kind of varying roles. Obviously, it's definitely a leadership role. With a group of staff that we manage each, a lot of provision that we're responsible for. So it's a very varied role. So I'm responsible for youth homelessness in Torfaen. I'm the safeguarding lead. I do a lot of work nationally with the youth homelessness stuff, but also with the Leadership Academy. I work as an associate. I've got the kind of strategic oversight for all our targeted vulnerable groups. As well as being operational as well. We still all the managers in the team do a little bit of face-to-face.
That's really good.
Yeah. Do
you think that's a good policy? Do you think that's something you can get behind?
Yeah, it's tough sometimes because the more time we have on face-to-face, the less time we've got in terms of strategy and supporting of staff and ensuring quality assurance and things like that. But I wouldn't have it any other way because to be able to do this job, you need to know what's going on with young people and what pressures staff face. You can't do that unless you live it.
And you fully submerge yourself, I guess, in that sort of team environment.
Absolutely.
Going back to you were an associate to Niall.
Yeah.
So you have a 2-year stint, don't you? So when did you start being interested in that type of stuff, and what was your journey with that?
This is where it crosses over a little bit. I've just spent the last 12 years as a school governor.
Okay.
And I've worked with 2 executive head teachers at the schools I'm a governor at.
Is that secondary or primary?
Primary. So that was quite an interesting insight to kind of younger age group.
It's interesting though because they're your future, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's consecutive executive heads. Both were associates themselves. So I knew about the Leadership Academy before getting this job.
Yeah.
So I was really excited when the job came out for this, and there was some reference to the Leadership Academy. So it was on my mind before I got this job.
Yeah.
So when I heard that youth work was going to be introduced as part of the associate program, I had a word with Dave. I really thought Dave was going to go for it, and I was going to support him all the way for that.
Really? Yeah.
Because he would have been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. But he was also chair of the PYO group at the time, so it was like, Gav, do you fancy it? I was like, yeah, two right, I do.
Yeah. That's really good for him to sort of push that to you as well, and
absolutely.
encourage you to do that.
I wouldn't have had the opportunity without Dave. I'm so grateful for him allowing me to do it.
Yeah.
And not only allowing me to do it, but almost immersing it as part of my work program.
Yeah.
So the commitment usually is roughly 1 day a week with the Leadership Academy. But it almost got kind of embedded into my normal work program anyway.
So you took the qualities of what Nile had to offer.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a win-win, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you implement it, service-wide, but also we're a Nile associate as well, so you're helping them as well.
Yeah, and I think I was so sort of committed and passionate towards it in the first place because I'd seen the results of other associates in the school sector and what they'd done, what they implemented in schools. I was thinking this could be huge for youth work.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was daunting. I ended up being the first.
That's
only one at the time.
Yeah.
So it felt a little bit daunting because I was like,
pressure.
Ooh, if I mess this up, this could close the door, and everyone in Wales will hate me. But I think I did enough because they took a youth worker on in cohort 5, 2 in cohort 6, and I'm sure
it's just increased since, isn't it? Yeah. So you set the precedent, really, didn't you? And
I
worked
hope
off.
so.
No, it worked off really well.
I really hope so.
Yeah.
And it was such a valuable experience. I did my 2 full years with them. Technically, just coming to the end now. They've set up a federation of associates for former associates, which I'm now stepping down this summer because I've got a new role in September with Estin.
Yeah.
So I'm not able to kind of keep that going, unfortunately. But
yeah.
I'd like to feel that Torfaen has benefited from my time with the Leadership Academy. I've been able to implement quite a few new things here in Torfaen.
Yeah. Give us an example of what you've implemented, because there's a really good substantial bit of work you've done with.
Yeah, my big passions, I think, over the last 10 years has been leadership and professional learning.
Yeah.
So what I really liked the schools as a learning organisation model that Welsh Government came out with. I think it was around sort of 2018, 2019, and I could see how, with a bit of tweaking, we could have a model in the youth service that would help as a framework to our approach. So essentially, a design and developed a learning organisation model fit for purpose for the youth service here in Torfaen.
Yeah.
And we've completely changed our approach to professional learning.
So when you say completely change your approach, what does it mean logistically? What do people have to buy into? What does it look like? For those who listen, they might not know what that is.
Absolutely. Yeah. But like we mentioned earlier about training budgets, it seemed to be kind of non-existent. So that quite often any money in our training budgets has to go towards things like mandatory training. Yeah. It's not really sharpening the skills of our youth workers for the needs of young people today. Yeah. So we had to look at it slightly differently and start taking a bit more ownership and responsibility of our own professional learning, which was easy for me because I've always been studious. I read lots of books outside of work anyway, which are relevant to work. So some of the things that we started to look at was we introduced personal development plans for every member of staff. Yeah. Our training officer would sit with the line manager and the staff member to look at what sort of training needs that they'd want for the next 12 months. Mm-hmm. And from that, we were able to get themes. So some might be very personal in the individual to the individual member of staff. Some training might be relevant to kind of provision teams, but some of it might be more relevant to the whole team. So the training officer's done a phenomenal job in being able to pull all that data together and look at opportunities then for the staff. But what we needed was also space to be able to you need that time and space to learn. So what we've done is we've essentially adopted a bit of a warped version of the asymmetric week that some schools in Wales have trialled.
Yeah.
So our Fridays now are professional learning days. Essentially, we have our team meetings on a Friday. We're also very lucky to have an educational psychologist in the team. So on a Friday afternoon, a usual Friday afternoon, we'll have group reflective practice or solution focused workshops, which has seen some phenomenal results for the staff in terms of the impact it's having on young people. So because we kind of shifted the focus on a Friday, what we've been able to do sort of 3 years in advance now is put in 5 or 6 training days, almost like inset days like schools have had, which now means that we can plan in advance what training needs we've got. So where the PDPs are showing as a staff team, actually, so for example, one of them was we're working with a lot of young people in the LGBTQ plus community. Some staff were lacking the confidence in terms of terminology, pronouns, what's the right thing to say and do. So that became a service need. So we were able to book somebody in, and we've had multiple training sessions on that. We've had reflective sessions on that to be able to grow that. But what it's also meant is, because everything is planned in advance, we're able to do kind of one-off project days quite often with schools on a Friday that sort of fit around our training and our planning days and our reflective practice. So we're actually working with more young people now on a Friday than we were ever before.
Really?
Yeah, which in some essences it makes us more productive in terms of the number of young people we're reaching out to, which is phenomenal. So I suppose other implementations has been where individuals have said, really want to build my skill set in, me for example, I want to build my Welsh skills. We had 2 Welsh speaking youth workers, so on my PDP, one of my actions was to shadow the two Welsh speaking youth workers to help improve my Cymraeg. And so we're looking at shadowing opportunities to be able to learn from one another. So one of our training days throughout the year is a team share. And so what we'll do is we get the staff to train us, because the skill sets are here, but they need to be shared. And so we've done 2 of those so far, one this year and one last year. And it's just phenomenal learning from our colleagues. We're a close-knit team anyway. But I mean, like this year, for example, again, we felt we needed a bit more on the LGBT front. There's been this kind of emergence of a bit of a trend with furries and things like that, and we just didn't know how to manage that. So our lead youth worker for that provision put like a session together, but also spent some time with young people in our LGBT provision, and recorded some stuff from them. So essentially, because they didn't have the confidence to come and speak to us on the day, but essentially we were being trained by young people.
They helped to develop
as part of our team share.
And
the information was so valuable. It was better than any other training course we'd had on that subject. So when I say we're looking at a different approach to professional learning, it's I suppose being a bit more creative and understanding the strengths that we've already got. And what I was hoping it was going to get to, like I say, having people taking that responsibility for professional learning. We've now got staff that are embarking on research-led inquiry. So one of our staff, she's currently doing a little bit of work with asylum seekers and unaccompanied. Completely new for Torfaen, because our demographic is pretty much 98% white. But she's embarked on this research. She's used the Ed Psych and the team to help her collate that research. And at the team share, she was able to share with the team what she'd learned, which we've been able to take on from that. And that was free. It's cost us nothing to do that. Maybe a couple of hours of her time. But the impact's massive, isn't it? We're all better off as a result.
And do you think it's what you're suggesting there? It's looking at professional development aside from the formalised training that you normally would associate professional learning with, isn't it? And I think it's turning it on that head, that you don't always need to sit in a classroom, have a PowerPoint. It's looking at alternative ways, isn't it, to learn. And
because that's where I've struggled, because I was so focused in terms of academic ability and things like that. For me, it was always professional development. It had to be something formal. It had to be something certificated and a proper accreditation for it to mean anything. But in reality, since finishing my masters in 2014, I've probably learnt more in the last 10 years from my own research and shadowing other people and listening to podcasts, reading books.
But that was the, that traditional method was the way we used to work with young people as well at one stage, isn't it? Everything had to be accredited. I always remember that.
Absolutely.
Have a certificate.
Yeah.
So going forward now, so you're potentially going on a secondment now, aren't you? So,
I am.
So where are you going? What's the plan?
Very fortunate. From September the 2nd, I will be joining Estin on a 12-month secondment.
So Estin is the Inspectorate for Wales, and the youth work services have been inspected as part of a new. We've had the pilot, haven't we? This is a new initiative now, isn't it?
They've been we were one of the services piloted a couple of years ago, and I know there was a couple of more pilots this year. Yeah. But from September, there's going to be a full 6-year cycle of standalone youth work inspections, and we haven't had standalone inspections for such a long time. So it's really exciting. It's going to be completely different to what I'm used to. Really kind of looking forward to seeing how it kind of pans out, because I think if the inspection cycle can be implemented effectively, it will add a lot of impetus to the youth work profession. That's what I'm hoping.
Do you think you get a lot of notice for, if you imagine education gets inspected already, don't they? As part of the local authority inspections, and sometimes the youth service is part of that, especially if they're helping to achieve the council's goals. Do you think your local CEO or your elected members will see that and actually, do you think they will work in terms of you being noticed more, being valued more?
Yeah,
and understanding your worth.
Obviously, I can only sort of go off local. Like say, we were part of the pilot scheme 2 years ago. Estin came out to trial an inspection with us, and we came out very favourably. And it was sort of bolt on to the local government one. So what we found is, off the back of that, we've got more credibility within our local authority, and it was a huge sort of pat on the back for the team as well, because we've got the quality mark, which is again another incredible thing that we've got in Wales for youth work in terms of recognising how good services are. But when you've got a body like Estin coming in and saying, you guys are doing a really good job.
It's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, and that that's published nationally. So it'll take time, and I'm sure there'll be some tweaks along the way, but the framework looks good. It's all based around the 5 principles of youth work, so it's very much focused on youth work, as opposed to maybe years gone by where, like say, it was always kind of part of a local government thing, or as maybe a youth worker in schools. So it was more kind of education focused. Even though we are educators as well.
And you'll be am I right in thinking you'll be one of the first youth work practitioners to be employed by Estin to be able to do this?
I'm sure they've had youth workers in the past, people with a background in youth work, so I'm not going to make a claim like that. Just in case. It seems like it's
quite massive though, isn't it? Because they could get inspectors already on their books to inspect youth work provisions, but they've actually getting youth work professionals into Estin.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as part of your role, and obviously the peer inspectors as well.
That's the thing. They've got a raft of peer inspectors that they've been training up. So it's phenomenal. I'm really looking forward to working with the peer inspectors as well. And
you're a bit nervous. This is like not your last summer, but like
my last summer.
This is it's a lot, isn't it?
It's very different. And I at one point I was thinking, oh my gosh, is this the kind of end of my kind of youth work practice? But in reality, if I'm going to be going out and seeing all these youth services, I'm probably going to be speaking to more young people than I am now.
It's interesting you said that, because I felt similar. Going into a national role, which is what you're going into. And I actually thought it would be quite a lonely place, but actually far from it. You're exposed to so much. And I'm like you. I worked in local authorities mainly, but when you're exposed to the voluntary sector as well, it offers a complete different perspective. And if you ever did have to come back, you come back richer in knowledge and experience.
Absolutely.
But I hope they keep you on.
But for me, I suppose it does feel more like a natural progression. Dave's been excellent in supporting me, and the last sort of 3-4 years I've been doing a lot more nationally, particularly with the Leadership Academy. I love that arena. I love kind of working across Wales, seeing what other services are doing, working with other leaders, and I do like that kind of wider partnership arena, that systems leadership approach.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. It is exciting.
It sounds as if in Torfaen you've created a really open, fair, transparent culture that's built on trust with your staff. Is that because of your leadership in terms of what's above you, or something you all just developed as a team? Because it sounds really...
The only person I have credit for this is Dave.
Dave, so Dave's the PYO, isn't he? So
Dave Williams, PYO and legend.
Everyone knows Dave.
I think he took over as youth service manager, PYO, in Torfaen about 2015, 16 maybe. Yeah. Maybe a bit later than that. And what he's grown here is just phenomenal, and it's going to be hard to leave the team in September because it is such an incredible environment.
Does it feel almost family-like?
100%. The compassionate approach that Dave has, it sort of seeps through everybody. I'd like to think that's my approach as well, and I think that's why I fit in so well in the team. But no, I'm not going to take any credit for the culture here because Dave has helped kind of create that. And it's a really lovely place to work.
Brilliant. No, that's good. Before we wrap up, we've got two sort of mandatory questions now, which I intend to ask everybody this. Okay. And so I asked Carly on our first podcast. The first one, we'll start with the sort of doom and gloom, and then hopefully end on a positive. So, looking forward, if you were forecasting forward, is there anything that you're nervous about, or you think that's not going in the direction it should be, or something you're feeling a little bit negative about?
I know we touched on the kind of political edge, the political environment earlier on.
Yeah.
It's obviously next few years' outlook doesn't look particularly great funding wise. Yeah. And it's not just us. I know schools in Wales at the moment are really struggling. Lots of schools in deficit budgets this year. I think it's going to be a tough couple of years. Yeah. And I think we're strong enough now to kind of survive that. I think when we lost a lot of our open access stuff before, we weren't positioned as well as we are now.
Is that because of the sort of headway we've made in other initiatives? Do you think we're stronger as a sector?
Yeah, I think we got a stronger voice. We definitely got a stronger voice collectively. I think the Interim Youth Work Board has really helped out with that, and bringing leaders together from both statutory and voluntary sector. Yeah. But I suppose the other thing is, like I say, it feels like we've got the momentum, and it feels like there's stones trickling down the mountain. I just hope it doesn't come to a stop, because 23 years in youth work, you do see these cycles where all of a sudden youth work's sort of on the agenda again, and I'd hate for this to be a phase. I really hope this is more something that's going to continue and fully embed into as being an education provider. I mean,
youth work is education.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even touched on kind of curriculum for Wales, but we can deliver that. We can deliver that. 100% alongside our school partners.
You're probably the first person having called it the new curriculum for Wales. A lot of people I speak to call it the new curriculum. Yeah, it's not new anymore, is it?
No. It's been out for a while now, hasn't it? But I suppose some schools, particularly secondary schools, are still trying to embed that. And
it's massive, isn't it? It was a big change.
It is huge.
So the next question is then, I suppose, more opposite to the previous question. What are you looking forward to? What's the positive? What have you got to be excited about besides moving into a secondment with Estin?
I'm looking forward to seeing how the inspection cycle works out. Yeah. So I'm really optimistic that it's going to be a good thing for the sector. Yeah. Really optimistic that, like I say, that there are movements in the right way in terms of, like, say, our recognition with the Leadership Academy. Yeah. Looking at, your role with the Workforce Development Officer for Wales, having someone looking at training and professional learning for the sector, that's huge. And we've got Gethin at the moment looking at policy and how we can potentially strengthen our legislative sort of standing. So there's lots to be optimistic there. I just hope that kind of, like I say, that momentum follows through, so that we
100%,
we see the fruits of our labour on that.
Yeah, and it doesn't come to an abrupt stop. And
Yeah.
No, thank you, Gavin. I appreciate your time today. And
thank you, Daryl.
if there's anything you want to sort of say now's the time to do it. What we'll do is we'll put Torfaen Youth Service's social media on our description of YouTube. But yeah, no, thank you very much.
No, I appreciate you coming out to see me.
Well, anytime.
For updates on new podcasts, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the notification button. If you want to be featured on the podcast, email ets@wlga.gov.uk.